Welcome to this special edition of Constitution World. My name is Richard Albert, and I'm joined by Jeong-In Yun, research professor at Korea University. Jeong-In is also a distinguished senior research scholar at the Constitutional Studies program here at the University of Texas at Austin. And I've asked Jeong-In to join me today to help shed some light on what's happening in Korea. The president declared martial law. There was a vote to impeach the president. And there's been so much that's happened since then. I thought, let's get some historical, legal, constitutional context from the expert on this subject. Jeong-In, thanks for making time to chat with me. Let's just dive in. Why did the president declare martial law some time ago?
First of all, thank you very much, Richard, for having me in this wonderful conversation, and which is very timely and very significant intervention in difficult times in South Korea. Yes, exactly. Just last week on 3rd of December, there's an emergency martial law declared by the President Yun, which has never been used South Korea in the last 45 years. Martial law is a type of emergency power declared by the president under the Korean Constitution, which is a very exceptional measure to use the military forces to maintain public order only in exceptional situations such as war, a battle, armed conflicts, or equivalent circumstances. Therefore, when the president appeared on the TV on a peaceful night where no such a condition, no such a situation occurred, the people were very embarrassed and shocked. You might be wondering why. Yes, for ostensible reason, the president stated when declaring martial law that the opposition party, which has a super majority in the National Assembly now, is carrying out a legislative dictatorship, so-called sort of legislative dictatorship over the government that is conflicting with the governmental on almost every issue and criticizing heavily of the president and the first lady's many charges for many corruption and bribery and other issues. So it seems that for the president, it seems that they have anti-state forces behind them. Therefore, he thought it is necessary to take an inevitable measure like martial law in eliminating such anti-state forces in order to normalize the country. But however, as you know, martial law can never be justified as a means of resolving serious political conflicts under a divided government. In addition, the President Yun didn't even follow the formal or procedural requirements of declaring martial law. So we have to look over the actual reason behind that in pretext of the legislative dictatorship over government. For actual reason, martial law was designed to shut down the National Assembly first, the only institution that could lift martial law according to the Constitution. And the martial law actually intended to arrest assembly members and intend to prohibit all the political activities of the citizens and banned the gatherings, and all the publication and media should be censored according to the contents of the martial law. In other words, he intended to establish a strong regime that he could dominate without any opponents or criticism through martial law. It was not a new practice to Korean people, unfortunately, because as it was used frequently and very used by the former dictators such as Park Chung-hee or John Doo-han decades ago.
You mentioned that the president did not follow the constitutional requirements for
Actually.
declaring martial law. What are those requirements?
Um, I can separate the reason, bracket the constitutional requirements and as a formal requirements, as procedural requirements, and the circumstance and content. As I said before, there is another situation like a battle or war or there is such a situation. It was one of the peaceful nights. It was totally, completely unexpected. And also, in order to declare martial law, according to the Constitution and the Martial Law Act, the president should convene a state council, the cabinet meeting, to decide it. And then he had to declare martial law and then right away, immediately let the National Assembly know that in a form that it requires it is written document. But there's no document or there's no the respect for such procedures at all. Also, after the National Assembly's vote to lift the martial law, the president has to immediately lift and withdraw the martial law. But after a few hours, he just abruptly appeared on TV and then he announced that the martial law will be lifted. But there's no other written document again.
You alluded to the domestic response in the country, that it seemed to have been, understandably so, very fervent opposition to the president's declaration of martial law. I certainly witnessed that on television, on the news. I read about it. What was it like being in Seoul when the president declared martial law?
The reactions from the people and the other players. Yeah. I will break it down twofold. First of all, the immediate reactions on that night, and then I talk about the following reactions after lifting martial law. According to the Korean Constitution, if a majority of the National Assembly votes to lift martial law, then the president must do immediately. Fortunately, when the martial law was declared by the president, it was around 10:30 p.m., late night. But surprisingly and fortunately, within 1.5 hours at midnight, 190 members of the National Assembly gathered in the National Assembly building, and around 1 a.m., very late night, they voted unanimously to lift martial law. It was a remarkable attempt, remarkable. It is a remarkable thing that although armed military soldiers, for example, including 707 Special Military Forces, which is very yeah, with Black Hawk helicopters, they were sent to the National Assembly to prevent the National Assembly members entering to the building and to attempt to vote to lift martial law. But amid all the confusion and the military forces were dispatched to stop the lawmakers. The lawmakers, the National Assembly members, managed to reach the plenary hall in order to vote to lift martial law, even if they had to climb over the walls of the building. And they made it, the legislative staffs made a barricade to prevent the soldiers to get into the hall. So finally, at around 4:30 a.m., finally the president announced the lifting of martial law in responding that. Yes, it was the sequence of how the martial law was declared and how the immediate reaction from the people and the National Assembly members and how the martial law was lifted. Yes, after the martial law was lifted, but it was very it was obvious. It was obvious, as I said before to you, that the martial law had been unconstitutionally invoked. Unconstitutionally invoked. And right after the martial law was lifted, on the day, the 4th of December last week, the National Assembly right away introduced an impeachment bill against the president to hold accountability. In the meantime, investigation authorities have opened an investigation into the president and thus involved in martial law, such as ministries and ministers and relevant ministries, and also the military commanders, and also, yeah, defense minister. Because as the declaration of martial law constitutes an act of insurrection under the criminal code of Korea. So earlier this week, key figures, including the president, were banned from leaving the country. In the meantime, as for the citizens who are angry, who are very angry with the president, have been filling the streets every day, almost every day, in front of the National Assembly since last week, calling for the president's resignment or the impeachment. In particular, more than 300,000 people gathered in front of the National Assembly last Saturday, the day of the impeachment vote. Another thing is very remarkable that academics have also played a significant role in this time in answering and advising the media on these unpredicted legal questions. Statements calling for the impeachment and punishment of the president have been made by constitutional law professors and researchers, as well as all sectors of society, such as artists, university students, and religious groups. It is a remarkable respond to the unconstitutional martial law declaration of the president.
Sounds like the reactions were really effective because the opposition to the president's declaration of martial law ultimately led to a vote to impeach the president. However, it's my understanding that that vote did not succeed. The president was not impeached. So why did the vote to impeach fail, given the quite rapid and robust and strong response in opposition to the president's declaration of martial law? Why did it fail?
Yeah. I think it requires a short description of the knowledge of the impeachment procedure of Korea. Under the Korean Constitution, if a high-ranking officials, including the president, violates constitution or laws in their official duties, the National Assembly could vote to impeach them, and then they are immediately suspended from office. The impeached person is suspended from its office and subject to impeachment trial by the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court finally decide whether to dismiss the person or not. So if the Constitutional Court upholds the impeachment, the person immediately dismissed from the office. So, as you said, last week there was a first impeachment vote. The impeachment bill was introduced in the National Assembly shortly after the lifting of martial law and was voted on last Saturday. But ruling party members refused to vote by walking out of the chamber collectively. To pass the impeachment bill, it requires 2/3 of 300 out of 300 National Assembly members to vote in favor of it. But the opposition members together numbered only 92. It is enough. It is a very big number, but it's not enough to pass the impeachment bill. So the ruling party's support was needed, but it failed. Then, yeah, you asked why it failed, and why they uh, refused to even participate in vote. There, I think it requires the understanding of the context of the ruling party and the Korean politics. The impeachment, the ruling party members, after the impeachment of former President Park Geun-hye in 2017, she was in the same party. She was the same party. So after the impeachment of Park Geun-hye, former President Park Geun-hye, then the regime changed. So the ruling party members, the ruling party entirely regretted a lot about the change of government. Therefore, they wanted to prevent this year's second impeachment. As for them, it is a second impeachment after Park Geun-hye, this Yoon Suk-yeol. So they desperately wanted to avoid losing the ruling party status, regardless whether the president was responsible or not. So they acted collectively against the
I see.
people's opinion or responses.
I see. I see. Okay. Okay. So this was really considered, as you say, a second impeachment vote, even though it was for a different president.
Mm,
It's my understanding, Professor Yoon, that in just a few hours, there will be a second impeachment vote in Korea against
yes,
the current president. So the
yes,
third impeachment vote for this party, but the second for this president.
yes,
What do you
exactly.
think, what do you think will happen at the second impeachment vote that will happen in just a few hours from now?
Mm. Actually, after the failed impeachment vote last week, there was a harsh criticism and disappointment from the people. Actually, the ruling party members were criticized, and they got a lot of pressure from their own constituent, the people. And also there's some changes in situations every minute. And for example, many evidences and also many testimony and confessions from the military commanders who were directly ordered by the president, which contains very serious problems. For example, under the martial law, the the martial law status attempt to the arrest. They had a list of arrest, including the politicians and some the media figure. So, and also, I said before, the act of declaring martial law does not only against the constitution or constitutional requirements. It's not just excessive exercise of martial law. It also constitutes insurrection, which is very, very significant crimes in any country, you know. So the ruling party members gradually changed their mind, and the situation is getting changing and worse. So I think the outcomes of the today's second impeachment vote would be somewhat different. Many scholars, not only scholars, many experts and observers inside the country expect it like that.
Hmm. Well, thank you. I have just one more question, if I could. I know you're preparing for the impeachment vote. I understand also that there may be some gatherings outside of the parliament and the court later today in Seoul. One last question. In your capacity as a research professor at Korea University, you're an expert in constitutionalism. You write about democracy and the rule of law. What are your reflections on the state of democracy in Korea in the aftermath of the president's declaration of martial law and everything that followed from that point on?
Um, um, Actually, honestly, when I heard the announcement of the president declaring martial law at that night, I was on my way home from my office very late night. I was so shocked. I felt like it was unreal, because the martial law was not new, never new to Korean people because it was frequently invoked in 70s, in 60s, 70s, and 80s before democratization in South Korea. What got me think mostly significantly what was the most worrisome is that, as you know, South Korea has been praised by their successful democratic transition since 1987, and it was praised and it was said as a very stable democracy, a mature democracy, and some of sort of a leading country in terms of democracy in East Asia regions, including Taiwan and Japan. Like, so I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated as a constitutional scholar because I was also working on the presidential system and the term limits and with the references with African countries. But these days, I was so frustrated. But among this difficult chaos and difficult crisis, very, very serious crisis, I want to empathize one thing, that although I was so frustrated and I was so shocked, I would like to highlight one thing in particular. Despite the military forces entered into the precinct of the National Assembly, the area of the National Assembly, with the armed, with the weapons, they were deployed on the day of the declaration of martial law. The lifting of martial law was possible because of the hundreds and thousands of people, citizens, who right away rushed to the National Assembly immediately after the declaration of martial law on late night. And the parliamentary members who rushed to the National Assembly to do their job, to do their duty. And the journalists were there fearlessly reporting from the scene. And also the young soldiers who were sent to the National Assembly, who did not know why they were sent there. Why were they? What they didn't know why they were sent there. So when they saw the people around the National Assembly, they were not able to take any active military action, even though they were very well trained and brave young soldiers. So upon the citizens, they were not able to actually stop the lawmakers. So I would like to say that the citizens, fearless citizens, and their representatives, the lawmakers, acting fearlessly prevented the worst case scenario uh, following the martial law by the president. The outraged citizens just continue their peaceful protest, hoping that the whole situation, this messy situation, by the overly ambitious president, who is not a democratic leader, this messy situation will be resolved in a peaceful and rule of law and democratic process. So I want to say that I saw some sort of reports or the analysis from outside observers or the scholars. While some observers have analyzed South Korea's democracy was broken by this event or screwed up or reverted to 40 years ago, instead, as an insider, as a constitutional law scholar, from a broad view, and my genuine the view is that I've seen that South Korea's democracy is different from the past, even though this martial law was quite identical to the past one. I think it was the President Yoon immediate im, immediate followed the reference of the former strongman like Park Chung-hee or John Do-hwan. And I define this event like a self-coup by the president. But since there are fearless and strong and democratic citizens, the worst scenario was prohibited, to be prevented. So the crisis is not over. I would say the crisis is not over, or the South Korea's democracy is not yet screwed up. Only the process of addressing this crisis is underway. So I hope that my fellow constitutional law scholars will be watching with great interest to see how we handle this crisis successfully.
Well, thanks very much for that. It sounds like from your analysis that the president's declaration of martial law and everything that followed from that point forward may have revealed the resilience of democracy in Korea. Remains to be seen, I suppose. There's a second impeachment vote on the current president scheduled for just a few hours from now. Thanks so much, Professor Jeong-In Yun from Korea University, also a distinguished senior research fellow here at the University of Texas at Austin's Constitutional Studies program. I'll ask you again to join us so that we can understand more clearly and see through your eyes what's happening in Korea, a very important part of the world and of Asia. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Richard, for this timely, very wonderful intervention in this matter.